I was 72 when my world tilted, the trust I'd built over a lifetime cracking like thin ice. My name's Vivian, and I'd made a life in Willow Creek, a small Virginia town where the air smells of honeysuckle and everyone knows your business. When my husband, Henry, died of cancer at 50, I was left with our 6-year-old daughter, Claire, and a grief that could have swallowed me whole. Instead, I turned our family's struggling bookstore into a community hub, hosting book clubs, poetry readings, and charity drives. I funded scholarships for local kids, organized food banks, and became the woman people turned to when they needed help. My white clapboard house, with its wraparound porch and hydrangea bushes bursting with blue blooms, was my haven, filled with dog-eared novels and photos of Claire growing up. I wasn't wealthy, but Henry's life insurance and the bookstore's steady income let me live comfortably and support Claire when she needed it, like the $50,000 I gave her and her husband Greg for a down payment on their house 3 years ago. The betrayal began with something ordinary, a knee replacement surgery in early spring. I'd been limping for years, my joints protesting decades of hauling books and planting gardens. The surgery was routine, 3 days in the hospital, a week of recovery at home. I was sore but stubborn, already planning my return to the bookstore and my volunteer shifts at the women's shelter. Claire visited me once in the hospital, her dark hair pulled back, her eyes flicking to her phone as she sat by my bed. "You'll be fine, Mom," she said, her voice distracted. Greg, her realtor husband with his too smooth smile, didn't show. I chalked it up to their busy lives. Claire worked in marketing, Greg chased property deals. I went home, hobbling on a cane but feeling alive, my spirit as sharp as the Virginia sun cutting through my windows. Then came the call that shattered everything. It was a Tuesday afternoon, and I was on my porch, sipping tea, the hydrangea swaying in a soft breeze. My friend Ruth, who ran the local bakery, called, her voice trembling. "Vivian, I didn't want to believe it, but, are you really dying?" I laughed, thinking it was a mix-up. "Dying? Ruth, I'm sore from surgery, not on my deathbed." She hesitated, then said, "Claire and Greg are hosting a fundraiser for you tomorrow at the community center. They told everyone you have a terminal illness, some rare disease. They're collecting donations for your medical bills." My tea mug slipped from my hand, hitting the porch with a dull thud. Medical bills? I had insurance, no debts. Claire and Greg had spun a lie, painting me as a frail invalid to milk sympathy and money from our town. My town. The heartbreak hit like a wave, cold and heavy, stealing my breath. Claire was my daughter, the girl I'd read Charlotte's Web to, taught to ride a bike, cheered at her college graduation. I'd given her everything, love, support, $50,000 for her house, because I believed in her. And now, she and Greg, with his slick charm and greedy eyes, were using my name, my life, to scam people who trusted me. I pictured them at the community center, Claire dabbing fake tears, Greg shaking hands, pocketing checks and gift baskets while I sat here, alive and well. The betrayal was a knife in my chest, sharper because it came from my own blood. Greg's influence was obvious, his flashy suits and big talk screamed opportunist, but Claire's choice to go along cut deepest. She'd sold my dignity for profit. I didn't cry. I picked up the broken mug, my hands shaking, and went inside. The defiance that had carried me through Henry's death, through years of single motherhood, sparked to life. I wasn't dying, and I wasn't invisible. They thought they could write me out of my own story, but I'd show them who Vivian was. The next day, I dressed with purpose, an emerald green dress that hugged my frame, pearl earrings Henry had given me, black heels I hadn't worn in years. My cane was a necessity, but I held it like a scepter, my head high. I drove to the community center, the parking lot packed with cars I recognized, neighbors, book club friends, shopkeepers who'd known me for decades. My heart pounded, but my steps were steady, my heels clicking on the tile as I walked in. The room was warm, filled with soft music and murmurs, a banner overhead reading Vivian's Legacy Fund, with a photo of me smiling, healthy, alive. Claire stood at a microphone, her voice thick with practiced emotion, Greg beside her, nodding solemnly. The crowd, my people, listened, some wiping tears. I took a breath, my defiance afire in my veins, and stepped forward, taking the mic from Claire's trembling hand. "I'm not dead," I said, my voice clear, ringing through the room. The crowd froze, gasps rippling, Claire's face paling, Greg's jaw dropping. "I had knee surgery, not a terminal illness. There are no medical bills. I didn't know about this fundraiser until yesterday." The silence was thick, heavy with shock. I held their gaze, letting the truth land. I wasn't done, but I'd started. "Before we begin, where are you watching from, and what time is it there? Drop your location in the comments, I love seeing how far these stories travel. And if you're feeling the story, hit that like and subscribe, it really makes a difference." Let's continue to the story. The silence in the community center was thicker than the Virginia summer air, every eye pinned on me as I stood at the microphone, my emerald dress catching the light, my heels firm on the tile. My cane rested lightly in my hand, not a crutch but a reminder of my strength at 72. Claire's face was ghost white, her mouth frozen open, the fake tears she'd been dabbing with a tissue drying fast. Greg stood beside her, his practiced solemn nod replaced by a slack jaw, his eyes darting like a cornered animal. The crowd, my neighbors, my book club friends, the shopkeepers who'd known me for decades, stared, some gasping, others whispering. I let the moment stretch, my voice still ringing from my words. I'm not dead. I had knee surgery, not a terminal illness. There are no medical bills. I didn't know about this fundraiser until yesterday. I paused, looking out at the faces I'd helped through food drives, scholarships, late-night talks at my bookstore. Thank you for your love, I said, my tone steady but warm. But I don't need your money. If you've donated, take it back. This isn't my legacy. I set the mic down, turned, and walked out, my heels clicking, the silence behind me louder than any applause. I drove home, the hydrangeas outside my white clapboard house glowing in the evening light, their blue petals a quiet contrast to the storm in my chest. My hands trembled on the wheel, not from fear but from the rush of reclaiming my voice. The heartbreak was raw, Claire's betrayal, Greg's greed, the lie they'd spun about my death. I'd raised Claire to be honest, to value the community that had lifted us after Henry's death. I'd given her $50,000 for her house, my support for her dreams with Greg, a man whose charm hid a calculating heart. And they turned me into a sob story, a way to pocket checks and gift baskets from people who trusted me. The defiance that had carried me through the fundraiser burned bright, but the pain of my daughter's deceit was a knife, twisting with every memory of her as a little girl, curled up with a book, calling me Mama. Inside my house, I kicked off my heels, the cool floor soothing my aching knee. My phone buzzed, Claire, calling 3 times in a row, then a text, Mom, please, let us explain. I ignored it, pouring tea, the chamomile scent calming my racing pulse. Greg didn't call, his silence speaking volumes. I sat on my porch, the night air cool, the stars sharp over Willow Creek. The community center scene replayed in my mind, the banner with my photo, Vivian's legacy fund, Claire's crocodile tears, Greg's hand on her shoulder like a politician on a stage. They'd planned this, counting on my recovery keeping me home, unaware. But I'd walked in, alive and fierce, and their scheme had collapsed in front of everyone. Let them scramble. Let them face the town's eyes, now wide open to their lies. By morning, my phone was flooded with messages, not from Claire, but from neighbors. Ruth, from the bakery, wrote, Vivian, I'm so sorry. I had no idea they were lying. Tom, the hardware store owner, offered to refund his donation and bring me dinner. The town was buzzing, their sympathy for Claire and Greg turning to outrage. I didn't answer yet, needing space to process. I walked to my garden, the hydrangeas swaying, and felt the weight of what I'd done. Taking the mic wasn't just about exposing them, it was about saying I wasn't invisible, not dying, not the frail widow they'd painted. At 72, I'd survived Henry's death, built a bookstore into a community cornerstone, raised Claire through tears and triumphs. Their lie wasn't just a betrayal of me, it was a betrayal of everything I stood for. I spent the day at the women's shelter, a place I'd volunteered at for years, serving soup to women who'd faced their own betrayals. Their stories, of cheating spouses, ungrateful families, echoed mine, reminding me I wasn't alone. One woman, Lila, squeezed my hand as I handed her a bowl. Heard what you did, Vivian, she said, her eyes sharp. You showed them. Keep standing tall. Her words fueled my defiance, a fire that warmed me against the heartbreak. Claire and Greg thought they could use my name, my life, to line their pockets. They'd underestimated me, and now they'd face the consequences. Claire called again that evening, her voice shaky in a voicemail, Mom, we didn't mean to hurt you. Please, let's talk. I didn't call back. I wasn't ready to hear her excuses, not when the sting of her lie still burned. Greg's silence confirmed what I'd suspected, he was the architect, his greed the spark, but Claire's choice to go along was her own. I looked at a photo on my mantle, Claire at 10, grinning in a bookstore apron, helping me shelve novels. That girl was gone, replaced by a woman who'd sold my dignity for profit. But I wasn't done. The defiance in me, the same fire that had rebuilt my life after Henry, was alive and fierce. I'd wait for them to face me, but on my terms, in my time. My hydrangeas stood strong, blooming despite the coming frost, and so would I. The morning after I crashed Claire and Greg's fundraiser, Willow Creek was alive with whispers, the kind that spread faster than wildfire in a small town. My phone buzzed relentlessly, not with calls from Claire or Greg, but with messages from neighbors, friends, and folks I hadn't spoken to in years. Ruth from the bakery sent a text, Vivian, you're a hero. Can't believe they lied like that. Tom, who ran the hardware store, left a voicemail offering to drop off a pie and refund his donation. Even my book club ladies sent a group message, their outrage clear: "We're with you, Viv. They won't get away with this." I'd seen this town rally before, after floods, for school fundraisers, when Henry died, but this time, it was for me, against my own daughter and her husband. The heartbreak of Claire's betrayal was a weight in my chest, heavy as the hydrangeas drooping under morning dew outside my white clapboard house. But the defiance that had carried me through that microphone moment burned brighter, a fire fueled by the town's support and my own resolve. I sat on my porch, sipping chamomile tea, the air crisp with early spring chill. The fundraiser's collapse was the talk of Willow Creek. From what Ruth told me over coffee later that day, Claire and Greg had scrambled to shut down the event after I left, refunding donations in a panic as guests demanded answers. The Vivian's Legacy Fund banner was taken down, the gift baskets, filled with wine, candles, and cash, returned or donated to the shelter. Claire's tears, so convincing during her speech, were now seen as crocodile tears, and Greg's solemn nods were mocked as the act of a con man. Their reputation, shiny and new in our tight-knit town, was in tatters. Part of me ached for Claire. She was my daughter, the girl I'd raised to value honesty, but her choice to lie, to paint me as dying for profit, cut too deep. Greg's greed was the spark, I was sure, but Claire's complicity was her own. I needed grounding, so I went to the women's shelter, my sanctuary these days. The low brick building smelled of coffee and clean linens, a place where I'd volunteered for years, serving meals and sorting donations. The women there, some battered by life, others starting over, welcomed me like family. I ladled soup into bowls, my cane propped nearby, and listened to their stories. Lila, a woman in her 50s who'd left a controlling husband, pulled me aside. "Heard about your stunt, Vivian," she said, her smile fierce. "You walked in there like a queen. Don't let them dim your light." Her words were a balm, stitching together the torn edges of my heart. These women, with their scars and strength, reminded me I wasn't alone. I'd survived Henry's death at 50, built a bookstore into a community hub, raised Claire through love and loss. Claire's betrayal hurt, but it wouldn't break me. Back home, my phone kept buzzing. Claire left voicemails, her voice shaky. "Mom, please, it was Greg's idea. We needed the money for the business." "I'm sorry." Greg sent one text, cold and clipped: "You've ruined us, Vivian. This wasn't necessary." I didn't respond. Let them stew in the mess they'd made. I walked to my garden, the hydrangeas vibrant despite the cool air, and thought about the fundraiser, Claire's practiced tears, Greg's hand on her shoulder, the banner with my photo, smiling and alive. They'd counted on my recovery keeping me home, oblivious, while they pocketed sympathy money. But I'd walked in, heels clicking, and turned their lie upside down. The defiance in me felt like armor, but the heartbreak lingered, a shadow I couldn't shake. Claire was my daughter, my heart, the girl who'd once drawn me pictures of us together, Mama and me forever. Where had that girl gone? The town's judgment was swift. By afternoon, Ruth called again, saying Claire and Greg had been shunned at the diner, their usual table empty as folks turned away. The local paper ran a small piece, not naming them but hinting at a misguided fundraiser that had backfired. I didn't gloat, I wasn't that kind of woman, but I felt a quiet satisfaction. They'd tried to erase my strength, to paint me as a dying invalid, but Willow Creek knew me better. I'd spent decades building trust here, from organizing food drives to funding scholarships. They'd rallied around me, not Claire and Greg. Still, the pain of my daughter's deceit gnawed at me. I'd taught her to value this community, to honor truth. Had Greg's slick ambition twisted her, or had I missed something in her all along? That evening, I sat in my living room, the lamplight soft on my bookshelves, a photo of Claire at 10 on the mantel, grinning in a bookstore apron, shelving novels with me. The memory hurt, but it also reminded me who I was. I was Vivian, 72, a widow who'd turned grief into a legacy, a woman who'd walked into a lie and spoken truth. The shelter gave me purpose, the town gave me strength, and the defiance in me was a fire that wouldn't go out. Claire and Greg were scrambling now, their scheme exposed, their names tarnished. I'd wait for them to face me, but not as a victim. My hydrangeas stood tall, blooming despite the cold, and so would I, my voice louder than their lies. A week after I appended Claire and Greg's fundraiser, my doorbell rang, soft but insistent, cutting through the morning quiet. I was in my kitchen, slicing apples for a pie, the scent of cinnamon mixing with the hydrangea breeze drifting through my open window. My white clapboard house, with its wraparound porch and creaky floors, felt like a fortress, shielding me from the storm of Willow Creek's whispers. I wiped my hands on a dish towel, my heart thudding, knowing it was Claire before I opened the door. She stood on my porch, alone, her dark hair loose, her eyes red and puffy, her usual confidence gone. "Mom," she said, her voice small, "can we talk?" I'd faced hard moments, Henry's death, raising Claire alone, but this, facing my daughter after her betrayal, was a new kind of battle. The heartbreak of her lie, declaring me dying for profit, was raw, but the defiance that had carried me into that fundraiser burned steady. I nodded, stepping aside. Come in. We sat on the porch, the hydrangeas watching, their blue blooms vibrant in the spring light. I poured chamomile tea, my hand steady despite the ache in my chest, and handed her a mug. She clutched it, staring at the floorboards, her fingers trembling. I waited, my cane propped nearby, my emerald dress from the fundraiser folded away but its strength still in me. I'm so sorry, Mom, she started, her voice breaking. The fundraiser was Greg's idea. He said we needed money for the business, that it wouldn't hurt anyone. I didn't think it would get this far. Her eyes met mine, wet with tears, but I saw the flicker of excuses, the same dodge she'd used as a teenager caught sneaking out. I didn't mean to hurt you, she added. I thought you'd never know. Her words hit like a slap, the heartbreak flaring hot. You thought I'd never know? I said, my voice low but sharp, like the knife I'd used on the apples. You told everyone I was dying, Claire. You and Greg stood up there, crying fake tears, collecting money from people who love me. You used my name, my life, for profit. She flinched, tears spilling, but I kept going. I gave you $50,000 for your house. I raised you to be honest, to value this town. And you let Greg turn me into a lie. She sobbed, her hands covering her face. I know, Mom. I was stupid. Greg said it was just a story, a way to get ahead. I should have stopped him. I studied her, my daughter, 35, her face so like the girl who'd once run through my bookstore, giggling as she shelved novels. But that girl was gone, replaced by a woman who'd chosen greed over family. Why didn't you stop him? I asked, my tone steady but cutting. You're not a child, Claire. You made a choice. She wiped her eyes, her voice barely a whisper. I wanted to make him happy. He's always pushing for more deals, more money. I thought this would help us. Her words stung, confirming Greg's grip on her, but her complicity was her own. You broke my heart, I said. I taught you better. You betrayed me, and this town, for gift baskets and checks. She reached for my hand, but I pulled back, not ready to soften. I'll make it right, Mom, she pleaded. I'll apologize to everyone, pay back every cent. Please, give me a chance. I looked at her, the heartbreak a weight I could feel in my bones, but the defiance in me held firm. Words aren't enough, Claire, I said. You lied about me dying. You need to show me you're sorry, not just say it. She nodded, tears streaming, and stood, her shoulders slumped. I'll try, Mom. I swear. She left, her footsteps soft on the porch, the door clicking shut behind her. I sat there, the tea cold, the silence heavy. The confrontation had been a battle, and I'd stood my ground, but it wasn't a victory. Claire was my daughter, my heart, the girl I'd rocked through nightmares, cheered at school plays. Standing up to her hurt, but letting her and Greg diminish me would have hurt more. I walked to my garden, the hydrangeas swaying, their resilience mirroring my own. At the shelter, I'd met women who'd rebuilt their lives after betrayal, Lila, who'd left her husband, Rosa, who'd lost her home. Their strength fueled mine. I wasn't just Claire's mother, I was Vivian, a woman who'd turned grief into a community cornerstone, who'd walked into a lie and spoken truth. Greg never called, his silence a confirmation of his cowardice. The town's judgment lingered, neighbors avoided Claire at the market, Greg's real estate signs were ignored. I didn't gloat, but I felt a quiet power. I'd exposed their scheme, reclaimed my name. The heartbreak of Claire's betrayal was a scar, but my defiance was a fire, burning brighter each day. I'd given her everything, love, money, trust, and she'd sold me out. Now she'd have to earn me back. I looked at my hydrangeas, blooming despite the cool air, and knew I'd face whatever came next. I was Vivian, 72, and my legacy wasn't theirs to steal. The weeks after Claire's visit were like the calm after a storm, the air in Willow Creek settling but still charged with the weight of what had happened. My white clapboard house, with its hydrangeas blooming fiercely in the spring sun, felt like a haven again, though the scar of Claire's betrayal lingered. Her voicemails continued, soft and pleading, Mom, I'm trying. Can we meet? Greg stayed silent, his absence a loud confirmation of his role in the lie. I didn't reply to Claire right away, letting her words sit, testing her sincerity. I'd learned that love didn't mean forgiving too quickly, not when trust had been shattered. The fundraiser, Claire and Greg's scheme to declare me dying for profit, still stung, the memory of that Vivian's Legacy Fund banner with my smiling photo a bitter reminder. But the defiance that had driven me to take the microphone burned steady, a fire that warmed me against the heartbreak. I was Vivian, and I'd write my own ending. I poured myself into the women's shelter, where I'd found purpose amid the pain. The brick building, with its scent of coffee and hope, was a refuge. I served meals, led book club sessions, and listened to women like Lila and Rosa, whose stories of betrayal and resilience mirrored mine. One afternoon, as we sorted donated clothes, Lila nudged me, her eyes sharp. "You're stronger than most, Vivian. You walked into that fundraiser like you owned it. Don't let your daughter dim you." Her words rooted me, reminding me I wasn't just Claire's mother. I was a woman who rebuilt a life after Henry's death, turned a bookstore into a town cornerstone, and faced betrayal with heels and truth. The shelter gave me strength, a community that saw me for who I was, not the dying invalid Claire and Greg had painted. One evening, as I shelved books in my store, Claire appeared, her face pale, her hands twisting nervously. "Mom," she said, standing in the doorway, "I left Greg." My heart caught, but I kept shelving, waiting. She stepped closer, her voice low. "I'm so sorry. The fundraiser was his idea, but I went along. I was greedy, stupid. I hurt you, and I hate myself for it." Her eyes, so like the girl who'd once helped me stack these shelves, were wet with tears. I set a book down, my cane nearby, and faced her. "You lied about me dying, Claire. You used my name, my life, to scam people who love me. I raised you better." She nodded, tears falling. "I know. I've been apologizing to everyone, Ruth, Tom, the book club. I'm working at the diner to pay back what we took. I want to earn your trust back." Her words stirred the heartbreak, but also something softer, hope, cautious and fragile. I saw her effort, the weight of her regret, but I wasn't ready to let go of my guard. "You broke my heart," I said, my voice steady. "I love you, but trust takes time. Show me you mean it, not with tears, but with actions." She nodded, wiping her face. "I will, Mom. I promise." She left, her footsteps quiet on the bookstore's worn floors, and I felt the first crack in the wall between us. Greg was gone, his real estate signs vanishing from town, his reputation buried under the town's scorn. Claire was trying, and that was a start, but I needed more than promises. I decided to act on my own terms. I called my lawyer, a kind woman named Ellen, and arranged to donate $20,000 to the shelter, funding job training and housing for women like Lila and Rosa. The bookstore, my heart's work, needed a new chapter too. I started a literacy program, inviting kids and adults to read together, keeping my legacy alive in Willow Creek. Claire began showing up, not just to talk but to help, shelving books, serving coffee at the shelter, facing neighbors she'd wronged. She didn't ask for forgiveness, just time, and I gave it, watching her closely. The heartbreak was still there, a scar I'd carry, but my defiance was stronger, a fire that had carried me through Henry's death and now through this. One spring evening, as my hydrangeas bloomed in bursts of blue, I stood in my garden, the Virginia sky streaked with gold. The town had rallied around me, their trust in me unbroken, their judgment of Claire and Greg clear. I thought of the fundraiser, the moment I'd taken the mic, the silence that had followed. That was my power, not in money or vengeance, but in truth. Claire was rebuilding, slowly, and I was too, our dinners together cautious but growing warmer. I forgave, but I didn't forget. The lie, the banner, the betrayal were lessons I'd hold close. I was Vivian, a widow who'd turned grief into a legacy, a woman who'd walked into a lie and walked out stronger. My bookstore buzzed with voices, my shelter with hope, my garden with life. They'd tried to bury me, but I'd risen, heels clicking, my voice louder than their lies. Willow Creek was my home, and my legacy was mine to define, now and always.